Welcome to Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Hadoke, try to guess my guests' favourite things about their chosen Doctor Who story.
Hello Toby, Peter Ware here, Deputy Editor of Doctor Who magazine. The story I've chosen for you is, I think, one of the lesser known stories in the Doctor Who canon. It's completely missing from the archives, but if it was ever to be returned, I think it would very, very quickly become a firm fan favourite because of the performances of the lead actors. The story I'm talking about is The Highlanders, 1966 to 67. Patrick Troughton's second story as the Doctor. It's just superb, vastly underrated.
Well, thank you to Peter Ware, Assistant Editor of Doctor Who magazine, which a title he has held for many, many years. And he's one of the most enthusiastic and genuinely jolly people you could ever meet. He used to be a dentist, you know. Who decided, of all the stories to choose, was The Highlanders, and we've got to episode 4. Thank you for joining me on it so far. Let's see if we can fling our way out of The Highlanders with aplomb. I'm slightly concerned because we've done 3 episodes of a story we can't see. I think I've told you every fact at my disposal. So I'm slightly worried because I've also got to talk and choose 2 things. In fact, I should have said all of this over the action because that would have bought me a couple of minutes. Strap yourselves in, guys. We're going to Scotland. So 3, 2, 1. Start the episode now. So here we are. We're going. Well, yeah. A word about Hugh David, the director. He. I think I mentioned he was one of those people that, he died. He was interviewed and then he died not long after. And you go, well, he must have been old. And now I know people of that age. He was still working, and a director called Romy Allison, I think, took over. But I can't remember the name of the thing that he was working on now. And Romy Allison had been I remember had been assistant foreman, production assistant on the Leisure Hive. But yes, Hugh David has been very unlucky because none of his episodes of Doctor Who exist. And Elwyn Jones, a Welshman, Hugh David, a Welshman, Elwyn Jones, doing the Scottish story. Elwyn Jones, there is a picture of. There are pictures about, and he was a big cheese with Z cars and softly. Seems odd that he still gets a credit when he chose the setting and the period. And I don't think they'd wanted to do. I think Innes Lloyd was so again the historicals. I don't think they'd wanted to do it, but they'd sort of committed. Oh, and that's the point. Hugh David was going to direct. He was directing the second Patrick Troughton story, which this is. But the scripts he got were for the Underwater Menace, and he just went, nope, I am not doing that. And so they swapped the order about. So actually, Troughton's second story should have been another sci-fi adventure with a mad scientist and his pet octopus. But instead, Hugh David did this, and it was brought slightly forward. So it's slightly anomalous in that sense as well. And Ben's Navy thing comes into force here, where he gets to do a bit of swim. I like it when companions get to, show their special bits of pluck. Although I'm sure my granddad used to tell stories of sailors who couldn't swim because it was better to just, if terrible things happened, just to drown. I'm sure that's a thing he said, which seemed awful to me. And Jamie can't swim in this, can he? Another disguise from Patrick Troughton. And I like the voice he puts on here. And it's a great look, the sort of wounded, bewhiskered soldier. He's got such a great face. And Ben looks so... The telesnap of Michael Cray's covered in water. He looks absolutely freezing. But again, a lot of these things have a sort of filmic look about them. But I think the stuff with the water and the the paddle boat are not film, which you'd sort of expect, and I thought maybe some of the stuff in the sort of the jail that they were in episode 2 and 3 would be sort of slightly filmic because of the nature of the sets, but no, the water is and the stuff outside is, but the water and the plank, that boaty stuff is, but the rest of it is studio. So well done. Hugh David was very highly regarded as a director from the people that I have spoken to, so I have high hopes this would look like a good production. And he was married to Wendy Williams, who plays Vira in The Ark in Space. So there's another fact to put in your pipe and smoke it. And I think David Garth was... I think David Garth's wife was friends with David Garth. Was friends with Nicholas Courtney. Was David Garth married to Geraldine Newman, who plays Hilda in Ever Decreasing Circles, or did I make that up? Who knows? If you're listening to the podcast version, the video version of this will have a clarification. Oh no, I've invented a thing recently called I Think You'll Find, where I correct any mistakes I throw in. But I'm going to say maybe he was married to Geraldine Newman, who was Hilda in Ever Decreasing Circles, which is again is a sort of reference to people of my age that is perfectly normal. But I know loads of Doctor Who fans have come since, and when I go, oh, so-and-so was in so-and-so, and they go, what's this so-and-so of which you speak? I remember Andrew Pixley telling me about he's talking to Emily Cook, who is a very knowledgeable and smart person, and he was talking to her about Sapphire and Steel, and she was going, well, I don't know that. I've never seen her. But of course, it was probably on before she was born, so why would she know it? Just in the same way that there's loads of science fiction made since that I've never seen. You only know what you know, don't you? And I mean, my science fiction knowledge is actually quite poor, if I'm honest. I've not seen a lot of Farscape, let's not go into the sci-fi I've seen or haven't seen in order to distract us from the fact that I don't know very much about the Highlanders. They've got a nice bond now, Kirsty and Polly, and of course they're selling the Highlanders into slavery. That's the sort of dastardly plan, and I know that I had cause to ring Derek Martin, Charlie Slater, off of EastEnders this week, and then he's in this. He's he's in the Smugglers as one of the sword fighters, but he's one of the sword fighters in this as well. And actually one of the guys in the Hold is Gordon Craig, who is the guy that doubles for William Hartnell in episode 3 of The 10th Planet. So he's a sort of emergency doctor, who I presume is long dead, but an extra and a walk-on, but who has had the honour, and not many people have, of playing Doctor Who, and he did it because William Hartnell couldn't do episode 3 of The 10th Planet relatively late in the day. But Gordon Craig is also the name of a great theatre practitioner, and it's not the same one, but that means it's not very easy to find much out about our Gordon Craig. He's got a great face, hasn't he, Solicitor Grey? And he's a good villain. And he's actually keeping it... Oh, there's Pat Gorman. Oh, how gorgeous. Pat Gorman, ubiquitous extra. You can, and in the recon I'm watching, he's wearing a woolly hat, and he's standing behind Patrick Troughton. Pat Gorman, there he is. Turns up in Doctor Who, I think between Dalek Invasion of Earth and Attack of the Cybermen. I think probably in more episodes than anybody else. He's in everything. I remember somebody had recommended The Sandbaggers on DVD, and I got that and said, this is a brilliant series, you'll love it. Well, I did love it. It's fantastic. And the first person you see is Pat Gorman in the street. what a legend! And actually, he when I was getting divorced and I stayed with a friend who looked after me, I discovered that Pat Gorman actually lived about 3 streets away. But I never had the pleasure. I did write to him, and he sent back signed pictures, but he wasn't terribly interested in being interviewed. And I spoke to his daughter after he died, and he was happy to sign things and stuff, but he didn't particularly want to go back, and I think was not necessarily comfortable with being interviewed. There is an interview with him on a thing called I Was a Doctor Who Monster that was a little documentary short put on before the Planet of the Daleks repeats, celebrating 30 years of Doctor Who. And I tried to track down the rushes for that so that we get a bit more of Pat Gorman, but I tracked down the rushes of pretty much every other interview apart from the Pat Gorman one. It's probably out there somewhere. I would be surprised if it wasn't. But I didn't get hold of it in time to write I did a little bit for Doctor Who magazine and a bit for my blog. I'm loving the atmosphere of this. I mean, we talk of the atmosphere of the 60s stuff, and as I say, sometimes something like Tomb comes back, and it's the atmosphere is in the performance, but it's not in the shadows. Whereas the smoke, and it's amazing how simple things like a lot of smoke and some shadowy lighting can be. Yes, the Laird actually doesn't do all that much, does he? It's very much a sitting down part. He must have been quite relieved when if he'd had a long week, he'd just I just have to have a sort of lie down here. You work with actors sometimes. You go, I think I should sit down at this point. It's because it's going to be a long run of the play, and I really think my character would probably find a chair almost immediately. And I did Time Lash for this recently, which I think will have come out before this. I'm mixing up the order so that historians in the future can piece together the production order. Yeah, I know some people will have taken that seriously, that I think will be historians in the future looking at, caring about this. I'm fully aware that that is not a thing. But yes, and Dickon Ashworth as Sezom spends pretty much the second half of part 2 leaning on his elbow. Yeah, we like to. There's actually, I quite like the way that we enjoy the 3 tiers of villainy, and I think they're nicely balanced. So you've got very over the top pirate guy, you've got very sort of cold and cunning and very civilized, although he's doing a deeply uncivilized thing, Solicitor Grey, and then the rather obsequious Perkins. Oh, I'm doing my German accent again. I do love Patrick Troughton. I hope you do too. Oh yes, you're at my house, aren't you? You're at my welcome. It's coming up to Christmas here in Hadoke Towers, and I have to admit I have been putting off doing the Highlanders. Peter, because he's a very fastidious and hardworking and nice chap, came in pretty early when I sent requests out and said I've chosen the Highlanders, and it loomed. So if this is vaguely entertaining, stick with me, do please, because this is what I was especially worried about. I'm just trying to think how we discovered things about it. There are far more telesnaps, as I say, than were printed in that Doctor Who magazine. But it's amazing how, again, isn't it beautiful that Doctor Who came back sort of piece by piece? So telesnaps had been seen. The Power of the Daleks telesnaps existed, and there are a few off-air pics of episode 7 of the Dalek Master Plan, and then these came back, and then I think it was when Marcus Hearn said, "Well, let's look at the BBC written archives," and came across, a whole stash telesnaps. So, but it was rather glorious that actually. Oh, and I think there'd been a few from the Moonbase as well. I think Michael Wolff, the actor from the Moonbase, had some. So bits had come in, which is better. That's a much better way round than us, Marcus Hearn, finding the written archives first and having that big stash, then some being found that were duplicates of ones that had already come. So Doctor Who's history was sort of peeled away layer by layer. Now I'm suspecting this fight will have been very, very good, just because it's got stunt guys doing it. Peter Diamond was a very, very good fight arranger. He's on hand to supervise the fights. I think gets a credit as sailor in this as well. Nice that Willie Mackay gets to fight Trask. But a director as good as Hugh David, although I don't know how much of this was done on film, and of course a film fight and a studio fight are very different beasts. But I'm prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt. There seems to be a lot of coverage, but I mean, we have no idea, do we? And that sort of touches upon what I was talking about with the telesnaps and things. We, so much of this is left to our imagination, and that's a blessing in some ways because it's exciting, but it's based on a tragedy. Any connection we do get, or any scant little fragments that we do enjoy, based on the fact that we only have scant little fragments because, and it's interesting, isn't it, that Trask gets thrown overboard. That none of the fight sequence from this is featured in the Australian censor cuts, so that's interesting. And of course this reconstruction has, I think I may have just been a bit dim, and a lot of the stills may have been from something else. The genuine Doctor Who and the telesnaps seem to be of a slightly different hue, so I may have just given you a bum steer. I may have given you a not very accurate recreation of which is, under the circumstances, only appropriate. But even if only a few fragments of what I said bore in any way bore relation to the reality, that is apposite. And because Jamie got to kill Trask, but he's not had a wild amount to do in the story, so I don't think it was always obvious that he was going to join. I like the fact that Perkins comes good. The sort of Dickensian Clark, who, for all his humility, has a little bit of a survival instinct, but also I think because he's a nice character, it's not all opportunism. It's partially as well because he's a victim of circumstance and he's trying to survive, and I think it's a nice moment of it, because if Solicitor Grey is not going to die, which is unusual for a Doctor Who villain, Trask is the one there to get the mortal conclusion, whereas Grey unusually, yes, does not die, but he does get his comeuppance, not just at the hands of the Doctor, but his servant, who he's sort of bullied around a bit, the little man gets a nice victory, which I enjoy, and might well be actually what I choose for my moment. We're glad to have you with us too, Fraser Hines, who on a 4-week engagement, as anybody that's associated with Doctor Who will tell you, You will never leave, and he certainly never has, and he's in every Troughton story bar the very first, which is a pretty hefty, pretty hefty contribution to the show. Good for him. He's a bit of a Doctor Who legend, and I think his rapport with Patrick Troughton is one of the highlights of the era. And he's... Oh, and Fraser, yes, of course, because we're going to have a new character come in now. And Fraser always mentions Guy Middleton, who had been a sort of 30s and 40s matinee idol towards the end of his career and his life here. But yes, Colonel Atwood is played by an actor of quite good of good stock, and it's it's very much a cameo appearance. He's not actually here yet, so I've just said everything about him before he's come on the scene. And is this the first we've seen of Algernon in this episode? So actually, the pirate story the ship story is gone, the slave story is gone, and it's more just facilitating the egress of the Doctor and his chums. Poor old Algernon Fish. I am feeling a bit sorry for him now. There is Guy Middleton, and he really is playing sort of upper class twit, which is rather fun. But Fraser always goes, "Oh God, we got Guy Middleton." It was that was amazing. But yeah, they get him for one episode. But he doesn't get star billing or anything. He's wanders in for a bit. I'd be interested to see. I haven't seen the paperwork for this. I'd be interested to see, because of the way that the BBC pay people. If you've done a lot for the BBC, even coming in for one episode, you might ended up being paid more than everybody else, and it's often very little to do with the billing or the size of the part as well. The paperwork I have seen, it's very interesting to see who gets paid what, and as I say, the BBC system is you get paid a little bit more every time you perform for them, and your bar will be set by your agent at various points in the career, so how much it goes up by will depend on status a little bit, but continued and frequent employment bumped your fee up quite a lot, and working on film bumped your fee up quite a lot. It's amazing how doing a couple of stints in the film sequences meant that you got paid a lot more than people that went to rehearsal and studio. And actually, the Finch stuff is nice. That as with Perkins, who's the sort of worm that turned, Finch gets his moment. Finch starts off as a bit of an arse. Then he becomes a sort of hapless stooge of Polly's machinations and her game contribution and her quick-wittedness. But actually, he gets a chance to better himself. And do the right thing, so Gray actually gets a comeuppance twice. He's had a comeuppance at the hands of Perkins, and now he's got a comeuppance at the hands of the other, slightly hapless underdog sort of character. Oh, Peter Welch, by the way, as the sergeant, turns up again in the Android Invasion as Mr. Morgan in the pub. Always nice to see actors crop up a couple of times in Doctor Who. Still waiting for that Dallas Cavell interview, though. I think that's lovely, and Polly kisses him. And it's a funny thing about time travel, though, because as soon as they go, in Polly's time, Algernon Finch has been dead for centuries. And it's very funny how I sometimes think that when we watch a war film, we go, "Oh, they've survived the film." fact is, they could die the very next day. Well, it's 1917 the other day. You go, oh, they've survived. You go, yeah, but it's 1917. There's a whole year to go. But you know, yes, our lives with the people in the stories, it's somehow satisfying to us that if they survive our time with them, that's okay. Because, you know, when Jamie gets dropped off at the end of the war games, you know, the first thing that happens is a redcoat tries to shoot him. And the doctor goes, oh, look at Jamie, he's doing that. And you sort of go, yeah, but now he is now massively imperiled and his chances of survival are very small indeed, especially as all his mates have gone away. So this is the remount. This is the night filming. So strictly speaking, because it was filmed twice, it's possible that two versions of this could exist somewhere. They won't, but two were filmed. Oh, but there's not even any... It's not that complicated a scene. There's not even any dialogue. Goodness me. In that film. Wow, so Jamie's coming on board is rather... What Jamie coming on board is... Very little happens with that. I almost want to rewind that and go, was I not paying attention? So I won't go on about it too much, but it seemed like a very peripheral moment, really. It was just a sort of, we're all getting into the TARDIS and off we go, not a sort of, come on, Jamie, with the stuff of legend, which we do now. But no, anyway. So Jamie is on board the TARDIS. Next week, Doctor Who and the Underwater Menace. Ha 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 ha. Oh, nobody's chosen that yet. I would have a great time with the Underwater Menace for reasons I will explain when I do it, should I still be doing this and have not found anything better to do. I should have started this at the beginning of the plague. They found a vaccine now, so I mean, I may as well stop. I'm not going to. So... The two things, so a thing about episode 4 and a thing as a bonus thing as a whole. My thing about episode 4 is Perkins clicking his fingers in the face of Solicitor Grey. It's well, maybe him and Algernon. The fact that both of those characters get their moment where they become, because of their exposure to the TARDIS crew, they do the right thing. They become better people. And they both have a moment, a sort of punch the air moment, or the 60s equivalent of. And my thing about the whole story, I think, is the contributions of Ben and Polly, because Ben gets to do his brave thing and gets thrown over the edge, and he escapes from the knock because he's a sailor, so he's that I like all of that, and he tears up the contracts, doesn't he? And very much steers the Highlanders around the Doctor's madness because they don't quite know how to take him, and Ben's the sort of voice of reason. Ben catches on when they don't. And Polly, whose stuff with Kirsty and with Finch is brilliant, and she's very game and she's very smart, and it's her idea to do the orange selling thing, and has a really good contribution to the story that she doesn't get in some of the others, it has to be said. So yeah, the contributions of Ben and Polly, I think, are lovely in that story. What does Peter say? But I am going to go back and watch that end to see Jamie's joining of the show.
Episode 4. Well, the one thing obviously I haven't mentioned yet is Fraser Hines as Jamie. This was, of course, Fraser Hines' first appearance as Jamie in the story, and he doesn't get to do an awful lot in the first 3 episodes, but in episode 4, Jamie comes into his own. He takes a lead role in the fight aboard the Annabelle, the slaver ship, towards the end of the episode, and he takes on Captain Trask in a sword fight, eventually forcing Trask overboard and into the Firth. So heroic Jamie then escorts the Doctor, Ben and Polly back to the TARDIS and departs with them at the end of the story, and the rest, of course, is history. So that's my choice for episode 4, Jamie coming into his own with a sword fight against Captain Trask. And finally, My bonus thing that I love about the Highlanders is the Doctor's love of hats. Now, this was something which was dropped fairly early on in the second Doctor's run. I think they tried to pull in his trousers a bit, and they calmed down his wig, and they basically, when Maurice Barry came along with the moon base, he just cut a lot of Patrick Troughton's eccentricities away, and we get the second Doctor, which we know for the remainder of his tenure. But in the Highlanders, and like Power of the Daleks before it, the Doctor has an inordinate love of hats. He's got the little Highland cap, which he finds in episode 1. He's got his own hat, of course, the Paris bow, which many fans know as the stovepipe, but it's a Paris bow, I believe. He's got the cap of the kitchen maid, which he pops on for most of episode 3. He's got a soldier's hat, which we see at the start of episode 4, so an English redcoat hat. And there's also a hat which unfortunately doesn't survive in any visual form on the telesnaps or any of the few stills which exist from the story, which is a sailor's hat, which I think Ben shows him in episode 3. So that's my bonus thing, the Doctor's love of hats. Hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did, Toby.
Oh, Peter Ware. Well, I did now, because I think that's a Paris bow. I've always called it the stovepipe hat. So I would like a fact like that. I've learnt something. I hope you have too. I hadn't adumbrated the number of hats that the Doctor encounters. And I'm a hat wearer myself. I'm indoors for this, but I'm generally, I don't leave the house without a hat, and I have a variety of them. So you'd have thought I would have been a bit more simpatico with the millinery, but those are great choices. And funny, I touched on Jamie, but actually went the other way and went with Ben and Polly. I think probably I took Fraser Hines for granted just because I know, that he has much to come, whereas I slightly lament that this spells the doom of Ben and Polly, really, and their contributions are rather diluted, and they're slowly and rather unceremoniously edged out when Innes Lloyd goes, "Oh, I like the relationship between these two, the Doctor and Jamie." So it was important for me to choose Ben and Polly because I love them. But so the love of hats and Jamie, two very good choices, two things I didn't choose. So after a moment of where it looked like in episode 2, I might emerge from this with some honours. Sadly not. I've much chance of winning this. As I have finding a tin of tartan paint. Well, look, we got through the Highlanders. I hope that the next Patrick Troughton story I do is one with moving pictures. In fact, a couple have been chosen. I do have some more missing episodes to come. At the moment, I haven't got many new series episodes to come, so I might have to ask around for some younger people. I've asked quite a lot of young fans, and they say yes, and they haven't got back to me. So anyway, I'll keep flinging it out there. I've got, as I record this, there's a couple of weeks to go till Christmas. I think you will hear this well after Christmas. So Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for joining me in bonny Scotland. Who knows where we'll be next? But for now, awa ye goo. That was Be on your way. Ta-ta.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
Well, I may have lost the competition for this particular instalment of Happy Times and Places, where I was trounced by Peter Ware, but I think I'm even Stevens in the I think you'll find stakes, because David Garth was married to Geraldine Newman, who played Hilda in Ever Decreasing Circles. However, I made a boo-boo. I'd initially thought that the stuff on the little singular boat, not the Annabelle, but the little paddle boat, was on film. So I had a look between episodes, and I'd sort of misread the filming, which I thought had just taken place on the Annabelle. So because it seemed a bit of an ambitious studio set to me. And then having said that, I was filled with doubt. So I went back and checked, and I was right first time, but I was wrong with what I said, therefore, in the broadcast, that the filming was also, it wasn't just the boat and the outside stuff, it was the little paddle boat, the dock stuff, all of that with the water was filmed, which I was surprised that if it hadn't been, because of the amount of water and the nature of the set. So I was right, then I was wrong, and now I'm right again. Oh, that's life. So there we go. I think you'll find I've been both right and wrong at exactly the same time. And hello again, everybody. I did go back to have a look at Jamie's entrance, and of course it's all in the script. He sort of hangs back and Ben opens the TARDIS and Polly drags him in, but of course there aren't really any telesnaps of that. In fact, the only people we see in the telesnaps are Troughton and Michael Craze, and it's all covered in the dialogue in the barn. So that was clearly rewritten because it was studio. So it, they had a while between the filming in the studio in which to get that scene in order, and presumably in the original Jamie had instead gone off to continue the battle, or it would have been would have been a pretty tricky end for him. Although, well, or even he might not have even got that far. He might have stayed on the Annabelle, and all of the subsequent stuff would have taken place without him. Yes, that's probably more likely. I don't know. One of those two things. Anyway, yes, it's not as cursory as I thought, because all the explanation about Jamie coming aboard the TARDIS takes place in the barn. But somebody was gassing during that. Who could that have been? Anyway, happy to clear that up. So you don't need to tweet me or send me an email or write me a letter or kidnap my children and demand an apology for being slightly vague about a fact. Ta-ta! Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My guest this time around is Peter Ware, Assistant Editor of Doctor Who magazine. Special thanks to those shackled in chains aboard the SS Patronville: Daryl McLean, Pip Madeley, Nick Mellish, Justin E. Monaghan, Dave Owen, Russell Parker, Ken Patterson, Thomas Payne, Quaradors, Peter Reed, Gavin Rymel, Tom Selinsky, Jim Sangster, Paul Shields, Richard Smith, David Spencer, Dave Stevens, Adam Stone, Paul Taylor-Greaves, Sidney Trout, John Turner, Gary Wales, Alistair Wallace, Peter Ware, Kevin West, Rich Wiggins, John Williams, Sidney Wilson, and Pascal Zierka. The music for this podcast is specially composed by Dave Gates, the artwork is by Dylan Patterson, and thumbnails by Gavin Rymel. If you would like to join that list of names, and there are more than those mentioned, thanks to everybody, of course, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where you get advanced releases, exclusive material, and lots of other stuff, including a badge if you play your cards right. And you get charged as soon as you join up. That didn't used to be the case, but some people joined and then vanished before payday. Very clever. I admire their chutzpah. So I've had to put things in place. And you also get a discount if you sign up for a whole year. And I promise to let you go at the end of it. If you prefer to do the odd one-off contribution instead, you can do that at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. That too is appreciated, as is the fact that some people in these troublesome financial times cannot support anything financially. You are nonetheless very welcome listeners, and I'm grateful to you for giving me your time. If you could, however, rate these 5 stars and give them positive reviews and feedback wherever humanly possible, that would really help with my algorithms, and I always like it when people help with my algorithms. Okay, cheers. You can sign up to my YouTube channel where there is a video version of this. You can follow things that I do at www.tobyhadoke.com, and you can also tune in to a live comedy show I do every Tuesday at twitch.tv/excess malarkey. It's me presenting 4 special guests from the worldwide comedy circuit. It's a couple of hours. It's totally free, although we do accept donations, and it's a lot of fun.